Hello everybody and welcome back to D6 Wounds. So I've got the Dwarfs on the table for the Old World finally. For those of you who don't know, I played a couple of games with the Dwarfs very early on. And I wasn't really feeling how they were playing, particularly with the sort of models that I have, right? So I've got loads of big blocks of Dwarf Warriors and lots of Slayers and War Machines. But this edition isn't really about the big blocks of infantry, and War Machines have been sort of nerfed into the ground, so I've pretty much painted up a whole new Dwarf army. I've gone for the Rangers in core. I like the Rangers. I've had these old models for a long time. They're old sort of Citadel Norse Dwarfs, which I've sort of had in a box for a long time. But painting Dwarf Warriors is like my happy place. I've got well over 100 Dwarf Warriors painted, and I've got lots more still to paint. So it's always fun just to have a good excuse to go back and paint some more Dwarf Warriors. I've actually done quite a few conversions on them as well, so I've added in lots of crossbows and quivers with arrows and axes, because the Rangers are all tooled up, right? They've got all the upgrades, so they've got the great weapons, they've got the hand weapon and shield, they've got the throwing axes, crossbows of course. So I've had to basically stick on lots of crossbows onto their backs to make sure they all look like Rangers, which was a lot of fun doing, and I've got something that makes these models look unique now compared to the normal Dwarf Warriors. They're the old Norse Dwarfs, so they've all got or most of them have got the sort of horned helmets, and they look quite rugged already, and they've got backpacks on and things like that, so they kind of make good Rangers, I think. I like the way Rangers play in the old world. They've got crossbows, of course, range 30, no armor pen, but they've got the armor bane 2. Stick a runesmith in the unit and they spike armor bane 4, which can be quite deadly against knights, or even against big monsters and stuff. When you need 6s to wound anyway, and you roll the 6 and it spikes armor bane 4, then they kind of get no save. Ponderous rule is bad, but you got throwing axes which are quick to fire, so they can always stand and shoot against something, and if they're in close range they can move and throw the throwing axes. A line of, obviously I might run them in a line, right? So line hammer inspired in my core. I've got 32 Rangers, right? A line of great weapons at strength 5 is powerful. You've got the option to scout Rangers, of course. They can only fire in one rank in this edition, so you do want them in a line for shooting anyway. And then when people charge in, you're going to lose a few, and then you're all striking back with loads of strength 5 great weapons. That's pretty strong. And I'm not opposed to playing line hammer. I'm not going to redo the line hammer discussion. There is of course plenty of aesthetic problems with having a long line of troops, and you think, well, the Games Workshop, the rulebook explanation of the whole fighting rank being able to swing represents wrapping around the unit, doesn't really convince me when you've got a corner clip charge and you've got people striking from a mile away. But I don't think it's overpowered. I don't agree with some event organisers banning line hammer and limiting units to only 10 wide for various reasons. First of all, you've got missile troops, right, who have always been able to sort of stand in a line on a hill or whatever and fire their bows or crossbows, and so I don't see why limiting them to 10 wide seems a bit harsh. And also, lines of infantry aren't that strong. I mean, it's an aesthetic problem, isn't it? If elves can have double dragons and Bretonnians can have 360-degree flying circus dukes and peg knights, then why can't dwarves have 11 dwarves in a line, right? They've also got this being open order, right? They've got this free 90-degree pivot at the end of their move, and there was an FAQ which sort of clarifies that while they can't move more than twice their movement, so 6 inch for dwarves, within their movement, that free pivot they get is in addition to their normal movement, but also capped at 6 inches, right? So you can actually move your line forward 3 inches and then pivot the whole thing. Obviously you won't get a full 90 degrees if you're in a line, depends what sort of formation you're in, but if you're in a line, then sort of some will go forward 6 inch and some will go backwards 6 inch. Not exactly forward and backwards because you're pivoting, but there is a bit of leeway there to move your line around and get a better arc of sight, which can be important when you're trying to get as many shots as possible. So I've gone with the Grand Army for this list. Although this particular list is also legal under the X-Force rules in the Dwarf Arcane Journal. I don't think there's anything particularly stand out in the Arcane Journal, with the possible exception of the carp, which makes your dwarves movement 4. Movement 4 dwarves, yeah. The X-Force lacks the king, lacks the anvil, Iron Drake, some of the most potent things in the army, I think. The Royal Clans is cool, thematically really cool as well, to have like a big unit of Longbeards or Hammerers or whatever with the king in it. But it forces you to take Warriors or Longbeards or Quarrelers in core, so you can't take your Rangers in core, and your Rangers and Iron Drakes are competing for that rare slot, so I'm looking to take both those units. Anyway, I'm going to try the Grand Army out for a while and see how we go. So it's a bit of a Death Star build. We've got Burlock Damondson as the General. We've got the Thane BSB with the Master Rune of Gromril and Preservation on his armour, so he's got a 2-up save. He's got a 5-up ward from the Master Rune of Grugni on the banner, also with the Rune of Courage for immune psych and immune to fear and terror, and Rune of Battle with +1 combat res. The Rune of Preservation gives him protection against multi-wounds and killing blow. There's also a Runesmith in the unit, and so this unit of 31 Rangers, with all the upgrades and a Rune of Battle, has a static combat res of +4, plus its ranks, so obviously you might have some ranks as well if it's not in a line. So it's, packing quite a bit of combat res, and obviously relying on that stand and shoot to give it some extra combat res as well. I think it's quite a powerful rule that the stand and shoot counts towards the combat res in that first round, so hoping to make the most use of that as well. The Runesmith has 3 runes of spell breaking. We'll see if I can actually get in range to use them. There's 20 Slayers with a couple of Giant Slayers. I'm a big fan of Slayers, and I've got quite a few of them painted, and I'd love to find a way to make them actually useful in games, and so let's try out the Slayers. There's 3 Gyrocopters, 2 of them with clatter guns, 1 with the steam gun, a Grudge Thrower, an Organ Gun, and 2 Bolt Throwers. Now, as I arrived at my friend's house with my army, I realised that I'd left my war machines in a box at home, as you do, right? And not the first time I've done that. And so I've got some stand-in black war machines that Sam kindly lent me for this game. The Vampire Counts are led by Kemler the Leashmaster. Level 4 Necromancer, Skull Staff, which is the buff to Dispel, which won't play any part in this game. Spell Familiar for the extra spell. Cloak of Mists and Shadows for the ethereal rule, and he's rolled up Van Hel's Unquiet Spirits, Curse of Years, Spectral Steed, and Spirit Leech. Karel, the White King, with the Ogre Blade and Crown of the Damned, so he's got 4-up ward and Stupidity. Level 2 Vampire, mounted on a Nightmare with a Great Weapon, on Illusion with the Law Familiar, right? So standard Spectral Doppelganger delivery system. Master of the Black Arts, so he's level 3, 2 Power Scrolls, and the Dark Acolyte upgrade for Invocation. And he's chosen Spectral Doppelganger, Glittering Robe, and Column of Crystal. There's a White Lord BSB on foot with the Helm of Commandment, which is the buff to weapon skill for his unit, and a Cairn Wraith, so 5 characters there for the Vampire Counts. They've got a big block of 25 Graveguard with Hellish Vigour for the reserve move, 2 units of 6 Direwolves, 20 Zombies, 3 Spirit Host Blobs. Not sure what I'm going to do about that ethereal, but we'll talk about that later. And last but not least, 6 Blood Knights with the Drakenhof banner. They've got the 5-up regen. They've got 2 attacks. They come back to life. They are very deadly. They're probably the best cavalry in the game, with the exception of Orc Boar Boys, of course. So deployment. I've got my 1 Bolt Thrower and Gyrocopter on the left. Then I've got my line characters more central, 2 War Machines on the hill, Organ Gun and the Grudge Thrower with the Slayers, and I've got 1 Bolt Thrower on the right side with another Gyrocopter. The Vampire Counts, so they've got the Wolves vanguarding forward. Don't think they're going to play a huge role in the game because obviously they're a good target for the crossbows and the Gyrocopters. The big brick of Graveguard central with the Necromancers and the Cairn Wraith. Not so fussed about the Graveguard. I think my Rangers can take them in a straight fight, but we'll see how it goes. The Blood Knights, though, get the drop on me because they don't have enough drops to react to it, right? So the Blood Knights deploy last in marching column on the right-hand side. So they're ready to zip up the board, and then they've got the drilled rule, right? So they'll be hoping to charge on turn 2. And that's the problem I've got, because that's going to deliver that Vampire with the Doppelganger. That's a deadly unit, and really, it's the unit that I want to target with all my shooting, right? So Perhaps I should have scouted the Rangers, but then again, obviously I want to deploy my characters within the unit. In a game like this, though, I probably made a mistake because he doesn't have shooting, right? So I probably should have just scouted my Rangers so that I can deploy them last where I want to deploy them so that I can shoot at those Blood Knights, and just move my characters into the unit on turn 1, because I don't need my characters deployed in the unit when he doesn't really have much shooting. It's not like he's going to pick off my characters with bow shabty or whatever. So perhaps a mistake there, but it is what it is. I've still got the organ gun, of course, so hopefully I can shoot some of these Blood Knights before they get to me. The Gyrocopters vanguard up to cover behind the woods, and the Wolves vanguard forward a little bit, and we're off to turn 1. So Dwarfs got turn 1. My Gyrocopter on the right hand side flies over the dire wolves, drops some bombs on them and clatter guns them as well. In this edition I believe you can drop the bombs and shoot in the same turn, leaving one wolf remaining. So didn't manage to get all of them, but we'll see if he wants to actually use... I don't think they're actually in range of the invocation currently, but perhaps he'll be able to raise some of them later, we'll see. And the Rangers just shoot off the other unit of dire wolves with the crossbows. On to the vampire counts then. They got off all the buffs, most of which will be inconsequential in turn 1, but obviously they've got the glittering robe. The spectral steed allows the necromancer to keep up with the spirit host, even though it's already ethereal. Obviously giving it the fly roll allows it to move quicker. Helm of Commandment gives the weapon skill buff. Van Hell's invocation, raising a few zombies. Everything moves up as quick as possible. The Blood Knights obviously being the key point there, where they're already in marching column, so they're zipping up that right hand side, ready to charge either the War Machines or the Slayers on turn 2, and the zombies shamble up behind. Turn 2, so I've got 6 Blood Knights to take down. If I can kill all 6, then we're good, and we're just left with the vampire. And if that vampire charging into the Slayer is not too fast, I've got a couple of giant Slayers there that can challenge the vampire out, tie him up for a bit. But if I fail to kill all 6 Blood Knights, then they come back to life and I'm in trouble, right? So can I kill 6 Blood Knights in one turn? I should be able to, right, with a mostly shooty dwarf list. I redressed the ranks with the Slayers, right? So I thought, well, if they come in, perhaps I'll get to swing back a bit more with my great weapons. We had a discussion about this, actually, because some people say that you must redress the ranks evenly on both sides, which it doesn't actually say in the redress the ranks rule, but there is a bit in the command group rules which say that the command group must be placed central in the unit, meaning that if you were to redress the ranks all on one side and move 5 people to the left or 5 people to the right of your front rank, then your command group would no longer be in the centre of the unit, and therefore you can't do it that way, which I think is a bit of a tenuous link. I don't think it really is meant to be played that way, because it just means that if you've got a command group, you have to redress the ranks evenly. If you don't have a command group, you don't have to redress the ranks evenly. I think it's a bit... I think it's 2 separate rules, and obviously the writers of the rules haven't considered the interaction between the 2 rules, right? So personally, I don't think you need to do it that way, but I understand why people think that you're supposed to play it that way, so fine. Everything unloads into the Blood Knights then, right? With the organ gun, the bolt throwers, crossbows, which I don't get many shots with the crossbows because of the angle, and the clatter guns from the Gyrocopters, and we kill 5, and 1 of the bloody Blood Knights is left alive. Just couldn't believe it, man. And yeah, what's going to happen now? Well, they're all going to come back to life, and then they're going to charge me because they can use drilled, and well, we had a go. Let's see if we can salvage something then. So vampire count's turn, the expected happens, all the Blood Knights come back to life. The vampire power scrolls the glittering robe, they use their drill, charge the Slayers. They fail to get the doppelganger off in combat, but they slaughter half of them and follow up. So there's only 10 Slayers left, and then they, the rest of the army shambles up behind. Not how I wanted it to happen. I'm hoping that the dwarves can survive, the Slayers can survive another turn. They're unbreakable, of course, but it's just there isn't that many of them, and I don't want to lose combat on my turn, and then they swivel around and charge something else on their turn. I want to at least keep 1 Slayer alive or something, but we'll see. So Dwarfs turn 3, right? The Blood Knights are in combat, and what else am I going to shoot at? I mean, everything else comes back to life, or is ethereal. not really worth just plucking off zombies or graveguard. So we just charge. The Rangers charge into these spirit hosts. I think I can win combat there. Whether or not I'm going to do much damage to them, we'll see. I get a cheeky charge from one of my gyrocopters onto the level 4 Necromancer. Right now, obviously, the Necromancer is ethereal, but unless it can do a wound on my toughness 5 gyrocopter, he's going to draw combat and he's just going to stick there, which means he can't cast any spells. So I think that's a good use of my 60-point gyrocopter or 70-point gyrocopter. The Slayers all die on my turn, which is a shame, but not much I can do about that. The Rangers win the combat versus the Spirit Hosts, but they've got a BSB there, which means they only crumble by 2. And so, there's 3 bases of Spirit Hosts there, so I just don't know how I'm going to get through that unit. Vampire counts turn 3, the Vampire and the Blood Knights charge in then, go through the War Machines, initially fleeing with one of the organ guns. I don't know why they allowed War Machines to flee in this edition, but it's quite funny I can understand why the crew of the War Machine would flee, but how can they flee and then drag the organ gun with them? But anyway, it is what it is. And the Spirit Host charge back in as well, but lose combat, because obviously we've got that big static combat res, and then give ground. Turn 4, and we're shooting at the Blood Knights again, but there's just not enough there really. I don't have the organ gun, so what have I got? I've got like a few crossbows, I've got a rock lobber from long range, I've got a clatter gun and a steam gun and a bolt thrower, and so we only kill a couple of them, and the Vampire himself has an invocate, so he doesn't need the Necromancer, he can bring them back himself. So really an ineffective turn 4 for the Dwarves. On the Vampire's turn, the Blood Knights come back to life, charge into the Rangers. We take out a couple of them on the stand and shoot again, actually, with some good rolling, which should help for the combat rares. But the Spirit Host charge in, and that's the key point of this combat, which will punctuate this combat for the rest of the game, which is that from where those Spirit Hosts have made contact with the line, it neuters most of my great weapon attacks, because the way the rules are written, even if you're not in base to base, you must attack the closest unit. So most of my Rangers are swinging into the Spirit Hosts, which they can't wound, and there's very limited attacks going back into the Blood Knights, right? So, although when all's said and done, the Vampire fails to cast the Doppelganger, and the Rangers end up winning combat, because we've got a good static rares, we've got some stand and shoot combat rares as well. So the Rangers win combat slightly. We fail our restrain test, which is annoying, and we follow up into combat. And then turns 5 and 6, which I suppose I'll just summarise quickly now, the grind continues. The Graveguard can't really fit in, and so it's a kind of skirmish in the middle of the board there between these gyrocopters, me trying to pick off the Necromancer with some War Machines, and meanwhile the Spirit Hosts keeping my line honest, and stopping all those great weapons from going into the Blood Knights, as the Blood Knights and Vampire start to hack apart the Rangers. By the end of the game, the Rangers survive, but they're less than 25%, so they're giving up a few victory points there. I've lost 2 out of 4 of my War Machines. I haven't done a whole lot to the Vampire counts, really, so I'm not really picking up any points for, apart from a few units of Direwolves or whatever. So it looks like a win to the Vampire counts. So what have I learned with this first game with my new list? I suppose first I should say that the list will change. I'm still painting my Iron Drakes and the Anvil of Doom and so on, so there'll be some new additions coming soon. I think the Rangers hold their own well. I think that, first of all, I forgot about the Grugny banner. My 5-up ward saved the whole game. So I just, next time I need to play with the Forces of Fantasy book open in front of me, just to make sure, or take notes on a piece of paper, whatever, just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything crucial like that. Whether that would have made a big difference or not, I don't know. I mean, I still, the line was neutered by the ethereal units. That was the main factor of the game, which I need to come up with. I need to have some magic weapon in the unit so that I can just chomp through these ethereal units if they come in, or I need to make better decisions in deployment so that I don't get this ethereal unit in the middle of my line, preventing me from attacking the unit that I want to attack. So Still trying to figure out the best way to run the line. I'm calling it. The line of Rangers. To see if I can get the most out of it. Gyrocopters, I think, don't have the same role they used to. The steam gun's rubbish now, because all template weapons are rubbish now, because they only hit on a 4-up. I don't see the point of a template if you've got a roll to hit, but anyway. The clatter gun, again, is not really that good for a 10-point upgrade. I mean, it's mainly hitting on 6s, 5s if you get in short range. It's really not very good. But the main thing is that, gyrocopters can't redirect anymore. So, because skirmish is always aligned to the charging unit when receiving the charge, so you can't stick them in front of an incoming, cavalry or monster or whatever to redirect them in a different place. So they don't really chaff as well as they used to. You can use them as a speed bump. I think they do have a place in terms of like units of them or groups of them to sort of go after small enemy units, skirmishers, war machines, by actually charging them. They've got impact hits. They're still toughness 5. I think they do have a place, but their role has totally changed now. They're not a tactical role to them anymore. It's more just going after weak targets. I'm a big lover of Slayers, so I want to take them. I want to try and take them, but just the unbreakable rule is just. I mean, first of all, lots of things are stubborn. Well, I'm using the stubborn in the old use of the word. If you've got a big unit and your enemy doesn't double outnumber you, then you've got this fallback in good order option, right? So units are harder to break generally across the board in this edition. So unbreakable, purely on that alone, isn't as valuable. But unbreakable has an inherent flaw in that it doesn't allow you to fall back in good order. It only allows you to give ground, and often fall back in good order is better than give ground, especially for infantry, because you can spawn into a line. You can get charged, lose combat, fall back in good order, and then change into a line and get more attacks next time. Whereas Slayers can't do that because they just don't have this fall back in good order option. They're not drilled, so they can't reform in a way to give themselves more attacks, apart from redressing the ranks before you get charged. But once you get charged, that's it. You're just caught and you're just going to die, and they're just not strong enough to. And the death blows and so on just aren't strong enough to take down strong, units of cavalry or whatever that charge them. So, with a heavy heart, I may have to drop the Slayers for now and just try other avenues, and paint up my Anvil of Doom and get that on the table. But yeah, liking the way it's coming out. The Thane BSB I think works well. He's tough, he can take a challenge, giving the buffs to the unit, so I'm going to keep him in and see how we go from there. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Give us a like as usual, and look out for the next one coming soon. Cheers. Goodbye.